Greetings, family. Greetings. Thank you for tapping into the art of rising. Thank you for giving us your time and your attention. Greatly appreciate it. So, the art of rising is all about bringing up the rising of life and figuring out some of these codes. And we try our very best to get the hand-picked guests in order for them to reveal some of life's most precious codes. So this time we have David Petrovay, and he has an extensive resume. He's accomplished quite a number of things, and I'd like him to just introduce himself and let us know what he's doing. And yeah, let's just have some fun with it. It's the holiday season, man, and we need something like this to close out the year's calendar. So, David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be guesting with you and share my story and how it can help your listeners.
Thank you so much. I've read your bio, went through it extensively, and you seem to have some of those codes that we're looking for. So why don't you tell us where do you live and what are you doing these days and a bit about yourself.
All right. So my journey began back east. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I lived there for almost 30 years before I started working my way west. So after Pennsylvania, it was Arizona, then California, and currently Oregon. I live in Bend, Oregon, which is in central Oregon. So we're a little different from the coast in terms of we do have winter here. So it will snow and get cold as opposed to Portland. And I love it because it little reminds me of the Pittsburgh that I grew up with. So what I'm currently doing, I think I travel down three main lanes, Amzil, in terms of what I do in life. I am a certified career coach and counselor. So I have private clients that I work with in that lane. And then the other area is speaking, just like we're doing today, talking on podcasts. I've been on over 30 of them in the last few years, and I really enjoy doing them because I get to share my story in one of those lanes. And then I also conduct webinars on work-related topics. And then finally, I have already published 3 books on Amazon, and I'm in the process of getting ready to publish 2 more. So that's really exciting because I will tell you a little bit of a story about my writing. When I was a freshman at the University of Pittsburgh, we had to take freshman English. And part of that was being in a class where we had to write on a weekly basis. So the first class that I was in, we were given an assignment. And trust me, I did my best on the assignment. Turned it in. And the next class, the person teaching it, it was a teaching assistant. She puts up one of the assignments with a big red F on it and says, "This is how you don't write a paper." Well, the fact that my name was on it, everyone knew who it belonged to. And I felt humiliated. So she set the tone for how I believe my writing skills to be. Even though when I was in high school, I was in an advanced placement English class based upon my English skills. So what that taught me was, and I hope your listeners are hearing this, don't go by what someone else thinks of you. All right, because that was her judgment. I don't know what it was based upon. And clearly, as a person who became a teacher later, I think it would have been helpful for her to take me aside and say, "Look, I know you can do better. Let me work with you in terms of how to refine your writing skills." That didn't happen. So I think it was the fact that I think she was the one that was more at fault here in terms of her role and what she could have done to make my life better. Now, here I am. I've proved her wrong in terms of writing 3 books with 2 more on the way, and they're doing quite well. So we'll talk more about that later. So there is the writing piece of it. So not everyone goes down 3 lanes in their lives, but for me, it keeps me from becoming bored. When I am a little tired of one area, then I focus on another. And when I get tired of that area, then I focus on another. So there's always something to keep me busy and on track. So I like that about my life right now.
Well, that is great. Wow. That's happened to me also so many times. I was too old or too young or just wasn't talented enough or they didn't like my work. And they said, you're not gonna do it, or you don't know no one in that industry. And oh my God, like so many times. And if I would have listened to them, I still would have been in that one room, renting, sharing the bathroom. And oh my goodness, that's great. So I'm always fascinated about writers. Since I was being brought up, every time I looked at a book, it had so many pages and so many words in it. I was like, who did this? I was so impressed and still am with writers, man, and with myself too. Usually when I write a letter to someone, which people just don't do that anymore, but when I write a letter, it's like 10 or 15 pages. I just go on and on. I love it. Like I feel it gives me an opportunity to express something without someone interrupting me, right? I get to express those things. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the books that you are and you have written and things of that nature, and maybe like the process in going through it?
So, the best piece of advice I ever received was, how does someone write a book? The answer, one word at a time. Okay, so anyone could write one word at a time. And I think that's what helped me to be motivated to complete the first book, because it's a lot like when I wrote my dissertation. Someone said, do you know how many people with doctorates are what they call ABD, all but dissertation? And believe me, I struggled with that. It took me forever to write it. But the only thing that got me to complete it was when I was threatened with, if you don't get this done in the next semester, you're out of the program. So they were going to give me an award for the most number of years to complete a doctorate. But I have it. So with the writing, I think it's really about the idea of coming up with a concept that you feel passionate about. Because as I pointed out to people, if you're going to write a book, it's like a marriage. You have to be married to it. You have to be committed to it in order to complete it. So what I learned for me was the best way to approach this was to dedicate, it was 200 words a day that I would write. And I thought anyone can write 200 words a day. And so I would watch to see, when I was going to be close to that. And when I reached the 200 mark, I stopped. Even though it was in, right after a single sentence, because that would, spearhead where I would start the next day. And so I would keep a record of every day and the fact that I accomplished that. I did my 200 words today. And eventually those 200 words developed into chapters. And then those chapters became a completed book. So the first book that I focused on had to do with something I'm very passionate about, is the type of work I do. And specifically with counseling people who are between jobs. So I did a workshop back in 2013 with a group of job seekers. And the title of that workshop was Getting to Up from Down, Dealing with Depression During a Job Search. And so this group of individuals was feeding me all of this information about what that was like for them. And it was more than just depression. That was only one piece of it. It was all the challenges that they experienced in their job search. So when that was over, I asked myself, what do I want to do with this? This is a gold mine of information. I could continue to do single workshops with 20 people in them, or I could present this to a larger audience. Well, how could I do that? Well, it would be through a book. So I took that same type of information to another job search group. And they pretty much reinforced all of the same experiences that they were going through as job seekers. And I found that I could take that and summarize it in 5 different areas that people can struggle with during this time. And so they were obviously self-confidence. And then it was the idea of perseverance, acceptance, resilience, and commitment. So rather than focus on the negative emotions and what people were going through, I thought, well, no, they don't need to, be dredging their lives through that. They need to have something that's going to give them hope. So I looked at these 5 areas, psychological areas involved with making a transition. And then I put together all of the chapters based upon what these individuals told me that was important in their job search. So these then became subsections with exercises, activities for people to do that would help them to bolster whatever they were dealing with at the time. So each section was a little self-assessment, and that would determine where they might want to start. That it wasn't sequential in terms of, well, first you start with self-confidence and then you go to perseverance. You might find that you needed to start with acceptance, which was about grieving a loss of a big part of yourself, which was the work that you do. And so people could navigate through various chapters of the book and find what worked for them and apply it. So it did not apply to things like how to write a resume, how to do the perfect interview. There are plenty of books written about those, and they're all great books. But I found in researching this that there was very little, if anything, written on dealing with the psychological aspects of a job loss. So that became the first book. Then I did a follow-up workbook to it. So it took each of the beginnings of those chapters or sections of the chapters and created a series of additional activities that people could do. And if someone was part of a support group, part of a job search group or anything like that, they could take that and work at it as a group. They could say, okay, let's work on the first section of this together. And we're going to share what it is that we learned from this and how we can be better at what we do. So it's always about, as you were saying, it's about the idea of being better at what you do. It's constant improvement in our life. And so then there was the workbook. Then the third book was based upon an idea that someone gave me back in 2010, which was, why don't you think about writing a daily blog about spirituality and growth and how you can be better as a person? So I thought, okay, I could do that. So I started to do that back in 2010. It's now 2024. And every day, no matter where I am in the world, I post a 1-paragraph entry based upon, how you can grow spiritually. And it's called Ponderings, Daily Reflections for Inspiration and Transformation. And you were talking about, reading your letters and things that you've written. And I will go and read through them with someone and say, who wrote this? Because this is really well done. And based upon that experience I had in my freshman year, this should not be coming from me. And it's amazing because I was raised in a religious background. And, this whole idea of spirituality was not something that was ever discussed. You weren't to grow spiritually. You were supposed to grow religiously. And so you were told what that would look like. So a lot of things that I write, I'm sure that the nuns I had back then would look at them and say, oh no, this is blasphemy. This is not what you write about, because it talks about a source that's greater than yourself. And I will do a reading where it says, you can call this what you want. The important thing is that there is something outside of you that can help guide what it is that you're doing in life and help you to create the life that you want. So it's been a fascinating journey along those lines for me to cast off, that cloak of religiosity. And there's nothing wrong with the religion. It offers some great things for people to follow. What I've done in the last probably 10 years is to do more of the spiritual route for me. And it's where it's taken me today. And I'm very happy with that, which is all it's about, really, what creates the happiness you have today.
Right, right. I can see that. And I know we spoke a little bit offline also about some of the challenges that you've had too. So it kind of, connects the dots there too. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of those deeper issues? Because I mean, quite frankly, I've stepped in some, doo-doo like quite a number of times, so many times that I can't even, give you the number, right? But thank God that I found some way out of that looping thing, that it was like a knockdown, drag out, heavyweight fight, and that's why I continue to help people try to reveal some of these codes, and that's why you're here, David, right? Because if not, who knows, we probably would not have met in any way.
Right.
But why don't you share a little bit? Share with us a bit about some of those things that you went through, man.
Sure. Well, mine, like yours, was deep doo-doo. Okay. So people look at my life today and they will say to me, I wish I had the life that you have. And my response is always the same, Amziel, which is only if you're willing to go through what I did to get here. Because they're seeing where I am in 2024. I said, you should have seen what my life was like, 40 years ago, if not longer. So it all began as a child, really. One of my favorite things to do as a child was, especially in the summertime, my father would say, can you get me a cold beer? And I would say, sure, I'll get you a cold beer. So I would go to the refrigerator and I'd open it for him. Now, this is the age of 7, okay? And I would take a big swig, is what we called it, a big swig of that beer before I ever turned it over to him. I found out at a very early age, I liked the taste of alcohol. And then as time progressed, I liked it more and more. As life was not turning out the way I wanted, I found out that alcohol gave me an escape from whatever I was experiencing at the moment that I didn't want to experience. So it helped numb whatever was going on. And by the time I was in my 20s, it became serious. But I didn't really want to do anything about it or know how to do anything about it. So I still remember the time that I flew from Pittsburgh to sing with a church group over in Austria and Germany. And it was a private charter over there. It was a night flight. And from the time I was on the plane till the time, well, almost when I got off, I was drinking. And I was not a quiet drinker. So I think at one point when I demanded more alcohol, because they had like a 2-drink limit, I said, well, what about the woman sitting next to me? How much has she drank tonight? And they said, well, she hasn't had anything. I want what she didn't have. And I was so intoxicated that they were pouring black coffee into me in order to try to sober me up. But that didn't stop me, because the entire time I was on that tour, I was drinking. So that was what my life was looking like up to that point. And it wasn't until years later, because that would have been in my late 20s, it wasn't until about age 35 or so that I realized how bad it had become. By then, I had been exposed to 12-step programs, which again opened the door to spirituality for me that I hadn't experienced before. So it's been a little over 35 years since I had my last drink, and can't imagine what my life would look like today had I not stopped. I probably wouldn't be in front of this camera right now telling my story, because I lived a very, very high risk life when I was drinking. And that included, driving while I was drunk. And by the way, my self-talk around that was, oh, I'm a much better driver when I'm drinking because I'm a lot more careful about what I do when I'm driving. Well, I can tell you that it took a number of fender benders and other accidents for me to begin to look at that differently. So I think that whole experience for me was a turning point in my life to where I am today, because it did expose me to how we can live a spiritual life in terms of having what we experience today, the life that we live.
Now, I've also shared that in common with you too. I've had some pretty close calls. Man, if it was like a hair different, just a hair measurement different, like, yeah, we would not be talking right now. It just would. And then I know other people too, good friends, good, nice people and everything. And yeah, they've done some serious prison time. I'm not talking about 2 or 3 years, bro. I'm talking about just really bad stuff. In my opinion, I feel that alcohol is really the gateway drug.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cannabis. Cannabis, okay, just like anything, you could abuse anything. You could abuse donuts too. Like anything could be over the border with many things. But alcohol, it's the gateway. It opens up. That's why in the liquor store they always have wines and spirits, because they know that it's a spirit. And in fact, alcohol comes from the Arabic word, if I'm not mistaken, called argul, and it's considered a spirit. So that's why they know that alcohol does that. It gets attached to you. And that happened to me. I was so, like, it was attached to me that I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach, David, that I could only compare it to perhaps like heroin, which I've never done heroin before, but it was something in the pit of my stomach that the only thing that would take that pain away was having a few drinks. Like I would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, man, I got to do something.
Uh-huh. Well, we used it, for me, it was to take the edge off. Okay. If I went to a social situation and I felt uncomfortable, have a few drinks. That would take the edge off of it. And then, oh, God knows what was at the other end of that when I had
Yeah,
too many drinks. Okay. So
yeah,
I had to
yeah.
go back and say, I'm sorry to a lot of people for my behavior.
Mhm.
I was not too proud of it.
Same here. Like I considered a good night, even though I forgot most of it. I considered it if I woke up and I didn't steal somebody's wallet or touch somebody in an inappropriate way, then I had to call them and beg. Oh, it was just terrible.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So I think that, the whole experience is one where, first of all, I don't judge other people who have it because it's a disease. I learned that. Part of my graduate work was doing an internship at a local drug and rehab center. And it really exposed me to the power of this disease and the things that people will, drop down to in terms of getting a hard bottom or having a hard bottom, with stories about stealing from their children. I had a best friend from high school and college, and that's what he did. And eventually it ended his marriage. It ended a successful career as an attorney. And I guess in one of his drunken stupors, he fell down a pair of concrete steps and had a brain bleed and was never the same after that, to where
um,
he had to go into nursing homes after
mm,
that. So when you look at this, you realize that this is a very, very powerful disease. And I say to people, by the way, it is non-discriminatory. It doesn't care how intelligent you are, how educated you are, it will get you in the end.
how much money you have, who you know, where you live. Like you could be a super religious guy, or you could be on the dark side. It doesn't matter.
Nope,
Doesn't matter.
doesn't
No.
matter. And
So
so
why
I
don't you? I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that it's important to recognize that it is a disease. And if you come from an alcoholic household, which I did, your chances are 1 in 4, if you're male, of inheriting those genes for alcoholism. So there were 4 of us in the family, and guess who inherited it?
Right, right. Oh, wow, that's deep. Why don't you tell us a little bit, David, about because you have like this extensive resume, like you've done all of these things. Like I can't even imagine like somebody with a problem like that, among other things, I'm sure too, right? Because along with that comes like a whole train of things too, right? Relationships, financial problems, like physical and those types of things, mental states. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you get out of that? What is it that you did? What were the steps?
Well, I think you used just the word steps. There were 12 steps that I followed to get me out of where I was to where I am today. And I was, pardon the pun, religious about practicing those steps. So the first one was I had to admit that I was powerless over all of this and that there had been some type of unmanageability as a result of it. So it was pages and pages of what that unmanageability had looked like. And so it was really about a surrender to something greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. Because before that, I was insane. And if you look at the root of it, just like you did with alcohol, insane means not knowing. I didn't know that there could be another way of living life without alcohol. And so the first thing I had to do was not drink. I had to stay sober one day at a time. And eventually those days added up to where it's 35 years of it today and then some. So it was really about, saying, I'm committed to this. And I know other people who were committed and then for whatever reason, they went off the wagon. And like my friend, they did not have the best outcome as a result of this. And I think that watching that progress within myself and working with others who were struggling with alcohol and drugs, it really did impress upon me what life could be like beyond all of this. And so that's the life I'm living today, Amzil.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And not everybody gets that second chance too. That's what OMZL does too. We're here out here helping people, telling them you don't have to be like that. You don't have to do those things. There's another way. There's a great way, man, a great life happening out here. Let's be a part of it and let's be a part of it together. Right? So that brings us here to almost the halfway point of our interview podcast, right? It's not an interview, it's more like we're talking and people are just like kind of like the fly on the wall, just
Yes.
listening, right? I usually tell people that that's really what the podcast is, because when you eat like in a cafe or a restaurant and you're talking, they're listening to your conversation, somebody on the side.
You never know
You
what
see?
we're going to hear.
Exactly. Yeah, you see, so they're listening, and that's what's happening here. But what we like to say that this is sort of like the commercial part of OMZL and the art of rising. So what we like to do is mention about the Purple Sage Gathering, and I mentioned that to you offline about a big event that we just recently had. It was phenomenal, David. We had like 35, 40 people coming through. We had different artists that performed, and we also had breath work, and we had a cold plunge as well. We had food. We had a chef that came through, an alkaline chef, if you know about that. Lots of foods that we eat are acidic and things of that nature. Dr. Sebi. So we're looking towards some of his guidance. He made a huge impression on people, including myself. So we try to keep everything healthy, no alcohol, no drugs, none of that, no cannabis, no, none of that, nothing. just a great time, man. You know, we've had these events here at the Omziel Healing Sanctuary located in North Bergen, New Jersey. And we have a photographer. We have two of them on staff. And one of them, um, he said, "Hey, my dad's coming through." I said, "That's great." So when his dad came, I was like, we talked, "How are you, sir? How's everything?" "Oh, everything's good." And he was like, "Wow, there's a lot of people here." And I was like, "Yeah, we're having fun." He's like, "No, no alcohol? No, there's none of that, bro." He couldn't believe it. He was beside himself. You know, he was like, "Just good time, good fun." I was like, "That's all we're having, bro." And so that's what we're saying. We're saying that the Purple Sage Gathering is some of these events that we do. We do many things. We do men's work. We do retreats. We just had our first international retreat in the Dominican Republic. It was phenomenal. We're having one again now in 2025. And we do all sorts of things, but the events is a chance for us to give back and for people to express themselves. And the next one is taking place in March, right? So what we're saying now is that if you stay tuned to the end of the podcast, we're going to gift you a little bit of something concerning that event. That way you could come through because there was many people who couldn't make it. So that's what we're saying. That's the commercial part of the show right here.
That's a great commercial.
Thank you. So, David, why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you're doing these days, who you're working with, and how does that look?
Well, I have the best clients in the world because what I've learned through the progression of my own life is the power of something called the law of attraction. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but but basically it's what we put out is what we attract. So I have clients who are so committed to their own growth and finding work that is the best expression of who they are. So my job is just to help them to find what that is and to have ways that they can strategize in any area where they might not be quite so sure about what direction to follow. So that's part of what I do with the career coaching and the counseling. And I have an ideal client, and that's wonderful to have because when I know who my ideal client is, that means I know who my not ideal client is. And I have had to actually fire clients, one of whom was visibly drinking. Okay, he had a can of beer while we were having the session, and obviously was drunk. And I said, "You know what? This is not going to work." "Well, we could keep talking." I thought, "But you won't even remember what we talked about." So again, not a person that I would find to be someone who was really committed to the process of their own growth. I said, "If you ever decide that you want to change that, come on back. I'm willing to work with you." Haven't heard from him since. So I wish him the best. And I think that that's been really helpful to me. So with the law of attraction, it has really made a difference in my life. My Ponderings book has many of the entries that reference that. And right now, I'm actually taking a class in that. It's 12 modules, and I've already gone through the modules once, and now I'm repeating them, and I'm a third of the way through it the second time. So you set an intention, and then you have strategies for how you manifest that in your life. And so one way that shows up for me is a number of years ago, I read a book by Jack Canfield called The Aladdin Factor. And in it, he talks about having 101 wishes, just like Aladdin had 3. So I put a wish down, one wish per index card. And so I've watched to see what's happened with those. You would not believe how many of those have actually shown up in my life. And I say to people, if you're going to do this, don't put things down like I'm going to clean out my closet. Go big. So mine was things like, well, I have dinner on the Great Wall of China. Now, many people have been to the Great Wall of China. I've actually had dinner on the Great Wall of China. I would talk about people I wanted to meet, things I wanted to do, and places I wanted to go. So I have been to all 7 continents already. That was one of my wishes. Talked about the fact that I had been to the Baltic countries with the exception of Norway. So this past summer in September, I was in Norway. Now, how do I do this? Because I look at the expense involved and we don't go cheap, okay? It's the idea of, hey, I deserve to go first class and I'll go first class. I'll stay in the best hotels. Now, remember, with that background I came from in Pittsburgh, that should never have happened. I should have been staying in a Motel 6 in the next town for my vacation. But that was not how I saw myself. So, what these courses have taught me is you let go of the how. You simply put out there what it is that you're seeking in life, and the universe, whatever you want to call it, responds in kind with that happening. And it's really exciting to live a life based on that. And I think that this has just been incredible for me. And we were talking also about the effect of drugs and alcohol. Do you know that the human brain is capable of producing the same effects chemically as alcohol and drugs do? You just have to be in the mindset. Because I will tell you, there have been times I've been out on these types of experiences and I've been having such a high over it that I thought, oh, I don't think any drug or alcohol could ever match this. And
That's beautiful.
being open to what life does have to offer. So, what can you do in life? Pretty much whatever you aspire to. Now, there are going to be things that don't happen. So, for instance, I could probably not play a 7-year-old on stage. Okay. I'm a little bit beyond that. But the things that are within the realm of possibility, I put out there and they happen. And the people that I meet, where I live today in Bend, Oregon, if I didn't have this background behind me, and it gets getting dark now because of the time difference, but people say, do you live in a park? Because of the trees and the deer that come through the backyard. And it looks like something off the set of a movie. Who would have ever thought that my life would take me to where I am today? Now you can say, well, but you had a lot of advantages when you were growing up. Well, based upon my childhood upbringing, where I should be today, based on that, is having a blue collar job, doing some type of construction or hard labor work. Okay. And my father, in fact, at one point said to me, I don't know why you're spending this time going to school. You could easily get a job in the local mill in Pittsburgh and work there, similar to what my cousins did. But see,
Wow.
his aspiration in life was to have the same job when he retired that he did the day he began. And he did. That was not how I saw my life.
Right. Wow. Thank you for saying that, Dave, because I'm pretty much at that point also. Of course, naturally, I would have loved to realize some of these things, 20 years ago, but that's just not the case. And I can't go back, right? There's some things you just can't do. But while I'm here, I can do something about that. So personally, for me, um, my father, he passed on last year, and he was working like till his 80s at this job. He had changed different jobs, but even towards the end when he was diagnosed ill, he was still like on the phone talking to the job, almost like kowtowing to them, like, oh, hold on, like I'm okay, and I'll be at work soon, and I'm waiting for the doctor, and like just seeing that, like it's not easy for me even to talk about this, Dave.
Mhm.
So painful, bro. Just talking about it, those memories. And I don't want that. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for my children either. You see.
Mhm.
Why? When the masters are saying different, they're saying, hey, look, pay attention. Something is going on here. You're missing it. It's not that. It's not that. It's something else. It's here. Pay attention. It's gonna take some work, yes.
Mhm.
It's like I like to compare it to like swimming upstream, right? All the fish are going one way, and you're trying to swim upstream, and the bears are on the rocks waiting to grab you to bite your head off too. So now you got to get through all of these other things, but on the other side, it's so worth it. I've had some events, Dave. I'm just in the middle of it, and they're so beautiful, bro. Talk about high. Oh goodness, I'm in tears. I'm looking around like this moment. I'm like, this is, man, just incredible. I love it.
Yep. And you ask yourself, how did this happen? How did I get to this point based upon how I was programmed? Well, you change your programming. That's what you
Mhm.
do.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and you change your thoughts about, this is my self-talk. Again, out of work, not out of worth. I think the key word there is worth. What is our worth? And the bottom line is every one of us has an incredible amount of worth. We just have to step into it. And for many of us, we're afraid to do that for a number of reasons. But when we have that courage to step out of that box, what's waiting for us on the other side is unbelievable. It really,
Phenomenal.
it,
It's phenomenal. It's some of the things that the like I said, the masters they speak about it. Like they've left all the blueprints out there. Like the other guy sounds like the other one before him and sounds like the other. Why? Because it's like they're trying to show you
mhm.
we're here, and all of these things that they're saying, they're not true. There's a little bit of truth in it. That's why they sprinkle truth in it. That way you could believe the lies, and then you start getting with the program. Ah, yes. You see people, they're waiting. Oh man, I'm retiring soon. Can't wait for that, Jim. Oh, living the dream and all of that. I'm like, what? No, they can't be, man. How is it that I went from being someone who I didn't want anybody in my house, Dave? Like you could call me and no, I'm not home. In fact, don't come over. And now I'm the guy where I want everybody in my house. I want to open my life like to everything, and like everything is just flourishing for me. It's beautiful. So, Dave, maybe you can tell us a little bit about getting out of these things. What is it that you tell people, or what are some of the tools that you give people so that way they could see their worth? And in addition, you can tell us how is it that they could see their spirituality, living like that, open.
Right. And so I think that, in terms of giving people advice, I don't know if it's advice, it's just simply life lessons that I've learned is that, first of all, anything's possible. It really is. The life that you were born into is not the life that you're here to live. You're here to live, like I say in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, to be happy, joyous, and free. So the steps that you take are what get you there. Because for the most part, I'm a happy person. My life is filled with joy. And oh, do I feel free. And you couldn't ask for more than that. Because if you take a look at, what's written in terms of, the idea that we're here, okay, to be experiencing that. So looking at what you can do to help those things happen in your life. Don't be afraid to take chances. That's the other one. Don't be risk averse. I mean, you certainly don't want to put yourself in a life-threatening situation, but at the same time, if there are opportunities that come up for you, Be willing to say yes to them and then watch what happens. I know when we were in French Polynesia on my 70th birthday, we did an ATV up the mountain. Now, I didn't drive because I didn't know how to work the mechanism. So I was with someone who could do that. And we went up the mountain and there were no guardrails. And if you went off the side of the mountain, you fell probably about 1,000 feet. So you were not going to survive. Well, we made it all the way to the top and came all the way back. And then the people that we were with said, so how old are you guys? You know what? You're in your 40s or so? I said, no, today's my 70th birthday. And they could not believe it. So there's nothing about age that needs to stop you, because I'm 76 and I'm not done experiencing life yet. I have so many things that I have planned with my 101 wishes. So someone says, well, what happens when you do 101? Well, every time I do one, I replace it with a new one that I want to do. So there'll always be 101 wishes. And I think that that's a big, big part of it. Don't let your age get in the way. Okay. There are certainly things that I can't do as much of today as I did when I was in my 20s, but I take that into account and I don't let it stop me. Because when we were in London, there was one day where we walked 18,000 steps, and it was worth every one of them based upon what we saw that day. So again, don't let these self-limiting beliefs get in the way of what you are able to accomplish in your life, and keep growing. Just whatever it takes to keep growing. Be a lifelong learner. When you watch TV, not just, the programs that are mindless, but ones that require some type of thinking. So again, it's always being engaged in the world around you. And that's the other thing, is being open to what the world around you has to offer. And like you, I, as a child, was ashamed to have friends come into my home because I never knew what to expect from my father's behavior. Now, where we live, we're like party central. And we meet people we've never met, and they'll say, what's it take to get invited to one of your parties? And they don't even live in the same town. And we say, just give me your email address and come on over. And so part of it is just being open to connecting. And it's, again, building a sense of community. And someone said that right now, that's probably the best thing that we can do as Americans, is getting back to building community in our lives and feeling connected and supportive of one another and loving one another. It really isn't that difficult, as you know. It's just as
right.
to love someone as it is to dislike them or hate them. So why not choose one over the other?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I say. I don't argue with anybody, fight. I mean, we're open to provide. We're providing a service to help people, like, one-on-one basis. But then these other gatherings, like anybody, you could come.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care. You're tall, short, fat, skinny, gay, straight. Man, we don't. Why would that matter, David? Why would that matter? That's how we look at it. What would it matter? It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. That has nothing to do with me. Right? Are you a loving person? Are you respectful? Come on in, man. Let's have a great time. Be
Exactly.
open. You want to cry? I'm here. I've had many men, tough guys, man, all brolic and all that. Man, oh, cry like baby, man. Just open up in these circles. Like incredible. Women too. My wife deals with the women, and
Mm-hmm.
oh man, you could throw a rock at somebody that needs help on those levels,
Yep. And the other thing I just read, which I thought was profound, was the person said, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. I thought, wow, is that profound? Because she said, look, we're all energy. That's all the universe is energy. We just happen to be, the atoms and molecules are more compressed to give us a physical form like we have right now. But for all intents and purposes, it's all energy. So that when you are creating an idea, you're simply creating energy, because our thoughts, our feelings are all energy. And it's finding that like energy, again, that law of attraction. So we're finding that in the people who are drawn to our life, they're all probably vibrating at about the same energy levels. And the people who are lower, they're simply lower. That's all. My
Right.
job is not to fix them. It's just recognize that not everyone is the same. And that really helps. And then you were asking, what else can I do? Well, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I'm supposed to do, I don't always do this, but was to connect with whatever is greater than myself, and asking, how can I be of service today? That's all. And then I don't do the how. I'm just open to whatever that might be. Just like right now, our conversation is being of service to not only your program, but all of your listeners. How can I share my story that might be helpful to someone who's listening? Now, that might only be one person, but that's all that matters, is it touches the life of one other person.
That's beautiful. That's great. I think about myself as well, like my journey too, and in trying to get my message out there too, my vision and the mission that, we often say that one day the phone rang, right? But humans have free will. You don't have to pick up the phone, but we picked up the phone, right? And then you could pick up the phone and you hear the message, but you don't have to do what the message says. Again, humans have free will. You don't have to, right? You could just say, like, you hear the message and you go, no, I can't do that, or it's too much, or I'm not gonna let go, but we pick up the phone, we hear the message, and then we're doing what the message says. And the message says to serve. That's what we're doing. The Omziel Healing Sanctuary, right? My name is Omar, and my wife's name is Aziel. So
Ah,
that's where the name comes from. Om Ziel. You see, it's Om. And then it has different connotations too. It has the Om, and El means God, and there's different things that are in there too. So it's a private practice that we have. Me and my wife, we're here in North Bergen, New Jersey, and we're serving, and that's our job. Like you said, that's our mission, is just to serve, right? So
mhm.
sometimes there's people who come through, Dave. Sometimes they're just looking for a handout or see what they can do or get or stuff like that. And that's not our business to, weed those people out. Because what happens, Dave, is it happens just organically. Once they see that we are for real, we're go-getters, we're focused, service oriented, they just fall away on the sides because they go, yeah, I'm not with that. I'm going over here where the party is, or so. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they stop coming altogether.
Mhm.
Okay, and we never. And if they're mad, they say something to us, like in some way. I don't like the way the tea was served. Sorry,
Yeah.
and we just keep it moving.
Yep.
Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the tools, right? Because you said when you wake up in the morning, right, you realize that higher power, that greater thing outside of you,
Right.
right?
Right.
How about what else? What other tools do you tell people, that they can possibly integrate into their lives?
Yeah. Well, before we do that, I want to correct the fact that I refer to you as Omziel, and it's actually Omar. So I
Yeah, that's
clear
okay. They
that.
call me Omziel. They do. It's all
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, thank you for
It's
that.
full time.
Okay, great. Let's see. I think that one of the things that's important to do is to be aware of your language. Our words are so powerful, Omar, and what we say really creates the life around us. So if I'm mean spirited with my words, look what that's going to do for me. Okay. It's going to draw to me mean spirited people, mean-spirited experiences. So think about what you say. When I was a child, I remember a story about someone saying, okay, think about your words. Excuse me. You go to a very high place in a city, that's maybe 1,000 feet above the city, and you have a pillowcase that's filled with feathers. And you take that pillowcase and open it up, and you spread those feathers to the four winds. Well, it's easier to collect all of the feathers that were dispersed than to collect the effect of something that you said negatively about someone. Excuse me, because you'd have no idea how far that's going to reach. It's why gossip is so negative and so destructive. So when you're thinking about talking about others, be kind. The old Cinderella from Walt Disney. You can just be kind and care about others. You may not agree with them, but that doesn't mean you don't have to be kind in how you treat them. And then that is what is going to come back to you. So other language that we need to be aware of is can't and won't. So oftentimes people will say, well, I can't do what you're telling me to. It's not that they can't, they won't. And that's that free will piece of it. No, in exercising my free will, I'm going to say, I won't do that. And we need to accept responsibility for not choosing to do something that may not be within our best interest. And in other cases, if we look at the can't and the won't, maybe we can and we should. So that's taking it from another perspective in terms of, here's an opportunity that might fall my way. Is this something that I could become involved with? And just recently, I've done that with something that's happening here in Bend. They're looking to create a performing arts center. We have some smaller venues, but they want something big. So my thing was, think big. So we're on a task force that's going to begin to gather information about what that performing arts center is going to look like. So remember, if you think about manifesting, it's now only a thought. So what we're going to do is take it from thought through manifesting to where it's actually a place where people will attend to go and hear wonderful performances. And I think that that's really critical, that everything that exists around us today began as a thought. So think about where your thoughts are taking you. Are they taking you in the direction you want or away from where you want to be? And if they're taking you away, rethink them.
That's great. Dave, I wanted to just mention that one of our listeners is Denzel Hill. He's mentioning, first of all, he wants to say, thank you for the reminder, David. That one person is here. So he's confirming that. And he's also saying that these daily reminders of mastery are needed, that there's so much noise otherwise. So I just want to, put that out there. That way you can know firsthand that there are people that you're touching even here in the show, man. It's much needed. Our voice, it needs to be heard. I see these platforms like a tool. Right? Why wouldn't we use them? I'm on social media too, but I try my best to keep it positive.
Mm-hmm.
I always keep it positive. I do it. I keep it positive every time. I try to leave some sort of piece of content, some advice, some daily inspiration, something like that. I try to keep it. I do keep it like that. I feel that these platforms, they're for this purpose. I don't think that they're here to take a picture of your food and put it up on social media. No, I don't. No, I don't think so. No, I really don't. Standing in front of the car that you want, like, and showing everybody that one. And there's also the children too, right? We don't put our children on social
No,
media,
no.
but people put in their kids. And I had a close brother of mine, a good friend, and I had to pull his coat and let him know, hey, listen, bro, there's a dark side to this, bro. Really, somebody loves your kid, man. Don't do it, bro. Don't. And he stopped immediately. He was like, why are you putting the kids on social media for? Why? Oh, because I like to share, these memories with my family. Then send it to your family.
Right.
You're
Right.
putting it out for the world to see. Mhm.
I agree. And when I work with people on writing their resumes, especially with women, first thing I say is take off your street address. You don't
Mm.
know who is reading that, and they're going to find out where you live as a single woman. No. So that's a form of social media, putting it out there. And I think these are things that are important for people to recognize. Like for all of our travels, I never post where I am at the time. I wait until I get home and then I post,
Oh,
because there are people who will troll through that and
mhm.
find out where you live. And the next thing you know, and I've heard these stories, you come home and your house is emptied.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, there's some sort of protocol that we should definitely be aware of when it comes to these platforms. And
Yes.
and I feel that everyone should. Like I try to encourage all of my, good brothers, and I let them know, like, speak up, man. Okay, you're putting like a little piece of this, but say something. Come out. Come out.
Hmm.
People want to hear your story. I don't know what it is, but something positive. People need to hear that. Dave, I've left some piece of content where I was just sharing, like, hey, I'm out here, I'm running. Maybe you would want to run too. I mean, I'm tired. I don't want to do it, but look, I'm here. Like, be encouraged. And then I was sharing about where I've come from, and that I was homeless. I was sleeping in a car. I slept in the emergency room, Dave. Why? Because I knew that that's where people went and sat and waited anyway. You
Hmm.
see, so I just went with my duffel bag of things, and I went to the emergency room, and I slept there for a few days on a chair, just waiting, and then left when, after a few hours went by, you know and then I got some response. I had a woman almost in tears, man, like, I've been there, thank you so much, thank you. I had another guy too. He was like, I couch surfed so long that I was leaving indentations in people's sofa. They were taking me in. Thank you so much, man. I thought it was just me. And yeah, that's what I say, just share.
Yeah. And we're always given what we need at the time, like being in that emergency room, someone who was couch surfing. They were given what they needed in the moment until they were ready to take the next step.
Feel so too.
Yeah.
I feel so too. But all right, well, we passed the hour, and I feel that we can do another hour,
Oh, we
but
could.
but I don't know who's listening to like 3 hours of podcasts. I've yet to meet the guy, although I don't want to mention, but they're pretty popular doing these things. But I feel that an hour is good, man.
Yes,
It's good to get the information. Now go and do it.
that's it.
Go. These are the codes. Now put them into action.
Yeah.
Uh, so, Dave, before we go,
Hmm.
why don't you tell us, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and see what's going on with you, or pick up your book or something?
Well, you've done a great job, Omar, of running the little crawlers along the bottom that indicate, who I am and what you can purchase. So I do have a website, and it is called davidpetrovaycoaching.com. And it gives a lot more information about me. And also, there are links to podcasts that I've done. This will be one of them eventually, and my books. So it really is full of information about who I am, and doesn't really give much of my journey. I think that's what this platform allows for, is to talk about, how I got from, being a meek little first grader who was put in the corner the first day of school to getting a PhD with a 4.0 average. So again, it's that growth, that eventual self-confidence that you have to develop. And the book, Out of Work, Not Out of Worth, has a whole chapter devoted to how you can develop self-confidence in all areas of your life, looking at your strengths, acknowledging that you can't do everything, and what you're going to do about that in your life. So, and about, acceptance and when you have to say goodbye and how you can do that in a productive way. So it's just full of great information. Also, the Ponderings book. If you want to start your day with an inspiration, it's only one paragraph, 200 words. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes to read at the most. And it can really help, again, inspire and transform people. And it's based upon what I've learned in my life and what I've applied. And then, of course, 2 more books on the way, which are going to be exciting. And we can talk more about that when that occurs, Omar, because they're going to be very interesting, because one of them, the person I'm writing it with, says, I see this as a movie. And I said, so do I. Yeah. So we don't know where it's going to take us. But again, sky is the limit. Be open to opportunity. Absolutely. So again,
Thank you so much.
Where we have, you need to practice what you preach. I get to preach what I practice. I've never said that before.
Love it. I love it. Let's make some t-shirts and mugs and all that right there, man. That's beautiful. I love it. And I'm so blessed to have you on the show and share everything with you. And I have some other questions like how could I be invited to one of those parties and the address and all that. So I'll tell you what, why don't you just hold out? I'm gonna put you in the back room for a moment, close the show, and we'll keep talking. How's that sound?
Sounds good, Omar.
Okay, cool. Ooh, you have it, guys. Wow. That was pretty intense, man. That was intense. My hairs are standing up. It's just great, man, to reach out with people and they can share their journey. So I hope you learned quite a bit, some of the codes to life, and we're looking forward to the next show and the next guest as well. And tap in. Oh, yes. And as well, I said if you hung out to the end of the show, we're going to give you a little something here. This is what we're saying. We're having another event in March. The Purple Sage Gathering is taking place. All you have to do is mention David Petrovay. That is the code word, David Petrovay. Just mention his name and you will attend this wonderful, wonderful event for free. You come in as our guest. That's it. There you have it. Thank you so much, guys. Happy holidays and see you soon. Peace.